Attorney Chito Bustonera. From the National Union of People's Lawyers, Attorney Jocelyn Dainla. From Karapatan Alliance for Advancement of People's Rights, Ms. Christina Palabay. And from the Philippine National Police, Police Colonel Samuel Mina, Police Colonel Raniel Vanoles, Police Colonel Cesar Magsino, and Police Captain Norichelle Larines. Your Honor.
Thank you, Comsec. We now proceed to the next item in the agenda. The committee secretary is directed to read the title of the measure.
House Bill Number 10986, an act classifying and penalizing extrajudicial killing as a heinous crime, providing reparation for the victims, and strengthening the mechanism for its prevention, filed by the Honorable Senior Deputy Speaker Aurelio Don Gonzalez Jr., Deputy Speaker David J. Suarez, Representatives Robert Ace Barbers, Bienvenido Abante, Dan Fernandez, Joseph Stephen Caraps Paduano, Romeo Acop, Johnny Pimentel, Jerville Jinky Butrix Luistro, Ramon Rodrigo Gutierrez, Francisco Paulo Ortega, Jefferson Konghun, and Jonathan Keith Flores.
Thank you, Comsec. I would like to recognize Congressman Paulo Ortega to sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to introduce and sponsor House Bill number 10986. And if I may read the explanatory note, this bill seeks to classify and penalize extrajudicial killings as a heinous crime and provide clear legal standards to ensure the accountability for such action. The 1987 Constitution enshrines the state's obligation to value the dignity of every human person and guarantee full respect for human rights. It mandates the protection of life, liberty, and property, and ensures that no person shall be deprived of these fundamental rights without process of law. It is therefore imperative for the state to prevent and address any violation of these rights, including these occurring outside the bounds of the legal system. Extrajudicial killings, or the killing of individuals without judicial proceedings, legal authority, poses a grave threat to the rule of law, democracy, and the protection of human rights. These acts bypass established judicial procedures, undermining public trust in the justice system and violating the basic rights to life and due process guaranteed by the Constitution. The lack of accountability for such crimes contributes to a culture of impunity, where the perpetrators believe they can act without fear of legal consequences. The bill seeks to explicitly criminalize EJK, ensuring that any individual, regardless of rank or position, who is found guilty of participating in, authorizing, or condoning such acts will face appropriate criminal penalties. By defining EJK as a specific crime, this bill aims to strengthen the legal framework for investigating, prosecuting, and punishing those responsible for these heinous acts. Furthermore, the proposed measure aligns with the country's international commitments to uphold human rights, particularly under treaties such as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which requires states to protect the right of life and ensure that no one is arbitrarily deprived of it. The classification of EJK as a heinous crime is a necessary step to restore public confidence in the justice system and uphold the rule of law. It affirms the state's duty to ensure that all individuals are afforded the protection of law and that justice is served in every case of unlawful killing. By adopting this measure, the state not only seeks to provide justice for victims and their families, but also send a clear message to all acts of violence outside the legal processes will not be tolerated. This bill also creates extrajudicial killing claims board, which aims to provide reparations to victims of extrajudicial killings and create mechanisms to address, investigate, and prevent future cases of EJK. According to the report on investigated killings in relation to anti-illegal drug campaign of the Commission on Human Rights, released in 2022, the Commission on Human Rights was able to investigate 846 victims of drug-related extrajudicial killings. 577 were committed by law enforcement officers, and 269 of the unidentified and other types of perpetrators from 2016 to 2022. The repatriations provide a small relief to family of the victims of EJK and an acknowledgement of the wrongdoing committed by the state against their loved ones. In view of the foregoing, the immediate passage of this bill is earnestly recommended.
Thank you, Congressman Ortega. Before we begin, there are basic points that I would like to raise, and hopefully after the discussions today, we can answer this issue as to whether there should be two separate bills, one for the definition of the crime and another for the reparations. Because we have to keep in mind that under the Constitution, there should only be one subject in every bill. Every bill passed by Congress shall embrace only one subject which shall be expressed in the title thereof. So that's one thing that's I want to maybe we can decide on that later after we hear all the resource persons. And the other one is the definition of extrajudicial killing. Is it the proper term to use? And these are questions that we can answer after the discussion today. Congressman Manuel, yes.
Madam Chair, thank you. I also would like to share that we in the Makabayan Coalition with colleagues Rep. Franz and Rep. Arlene, we acknowledge the effort of the authors of House Bill 10986 in filing this bill. With the same intention, Madam Chair, we also intend to file our own version of the bill. Hindi lang po naihabol today, but hopefully soon ay ma-file din siya. But its focus would be on recognition and reparation of victims of human rights violations in the past administration. So it is inspired by a similar bill na kumilala po sa mga biktima nung Marcos Senior administration. Pero since limited yung scope nun, yung time frame, so para naman dun sa mga nangyari in the past admin, yun po yung gustong makover nung ating ifa-file na bill. For the record lang din, Madam Chair ng committee. Salamat.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
just
thank you,
yes,
Manuel, and yes.
yeah, Mr. Chair, just to manifest also my observation while we were holding the committee hearings on EJK, dun po sa Committee on Human Rights. Apparently, all of our resource persons agreed that there is no working definition of EJK. We even asked former Senator Laila De Lima, and even some of our resource persons who have been working with the UN, how do we actually understand if there's a legal definition, at least technical definition, a working definition for us to be able to classify whether these killings fall under the scope of an EJK. Unfortunately, sabi nga nila, even in the UN, there's no actual definition of what constitutes EJK. Perhaps the EJK terminologies that were used, some of them said that it was the terms actually were coined by the media, just to define and describe. I guess this bill, Madam Chair, is the authors of this bill is they're trying to now define what EJK, so that our courts would have a legal and working definition in order to set the parameters as well as to maybe perhaps determine the culpability of those who may be charged with EJK. So I just like to put that into context so that we can also move. Maybe that can also be a basis for our discussion, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair.
At least we have those issues in mind when we discuss the bills. So we shall now proceed with our resource persons. We will listen to the resource person, and then the members can ask questions at any time. Just let me know if you want to make a comment. So first, we'll ask the DOJ. DOJ, please.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair and members of the committee. For the Department of Justice, first we would like to apologize as our position paper is currently being reviewed by our division head to be submitted to our principal for his approval. But nevertheless, in essence, we interpose no objection as regards the initiative to come up with a bill to penalize EJK, as this is in accordance with Congress's power to give the highest priority to the enactment of measures that protect and enhance the right of the people to human dignity. And further, it is aligned with our international commitments, such as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the state has that obligation to harmonize and reflect in its domestic laws the policies behind such a covenant. And also, under the Constitution, it is the state policy to value the dignity of every human person and guarantee full respect for human rights, and that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And of course, EJK, or the summary or arbitrary killing of an individual, is a grave violation of the most fundamental right, which is the right to life. And it is a threat to our democratic process. Resort to extralegal processes by state agents or those acting with their apparent authority undermines the authority of our courts, who has the sole authority to determine the guilt of a person on whether or not he should be penalized. And of course, resort to these extralegal measures diminishes public trust in our judicial system, and it will promote a culture of impunity. Basically, that is our stand. But nevertheless, after the Secretary have signed that position paper, we will submit it po the soonest. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. DND. Mali yung AFP. Representative niya. Wala siya. Okay. DILG.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and to the members of the committee. The DILG has already submitted its position paper via email to the committee secretariat, Madam Chair. But allow me to read the salient portions of our position paper and also a few of our comments. We respectfully manifest the Department's unwavering support for House Bill number 10986 and its objectives of defining, penalizing, and preventing extrajudicial killings in the Philippines. The Department believes that this legislative measure will enhance the country's commitment to justice, human rights, and the rule of law. To strengthen the bill and ensure its effective implementation, the DILG offers the following recommendations or clarifications. Number 1, on preventive suspension, we propose that parameters be included, particularly in Section 10. Will it be the parameters on the imposition of preventive suspension as mentioned under the local government code, or it will be the parameters mentioned under the rules of the Office of the Ombudsman, Madam Chair? For clarity, Madam Chair, under the local government code, it states therein that preventive suspension may be imposed at any time after the issues are joined when the evidence of guilt is strong, and given the gravity of the offense, there is great probability that the continuance in the office of the respondent could influence the witnesses or pose a threat to the safety and integrity of the records and other evidence. while under Administrative Order number 17 of the Office of the Ombudsman, Your Honor, Madam Chair, it states that under Section 9, pending investigation, the respondent may be preventively suspended without pay if, in the judgment of the Ombudsman or his proper deputy, the evidence of guilt is strong and the charge against such officer or employee involves dishonesty, oppression, or gross misconduct or gross neglect in the performance of duty.
Authors to take note of that. Or do you have any comments, Tom? Adjo? Yeah, which standard do you want to use for this section?
If I don't know with the rest of my colleagues and co-authors, but I am more inclined to the ombudsman's because that in a way would insulate any possible intervention from the ones that has been charged with a case, no, of AJK, Madam Chair. But again, I subscribe to the collective wisdom of this committee. That is just my personal take on that.
Any comments from yes?
May I just ask is it the ILG?
Yes, Madam
Yeah,
Chair.
who said earlier that we will try to improve the provision on preventive suspension. May I know if that is, that is your position, original position, that preventive suspension is or can be part of this provision of this this law and this measure being on the table? Because remember, Madam Chair, a preventive suspension is more appropriately or commonly used in administrative or even employment context. That is to ensure that the one facing charges do not interfere or does not interfere with the evidence or does not influence the witnesses. So do you still see the relevance of this in a penal law? Because we are legislating a penal measure. And then, so as I said, para po yata ito sa administrative regulation.
Yes, Kong. See.
We can also make some hybrid, no? It's a combination of the two. I agree with Representative Acharon. It's about it's only about the administrative cases that's been filed. But if we can actually do some combination of the two naman I mean, if there's no violations under the Constitution, maybe we can also explore on probably introducing the combination of the two.
That is why, Madam Chair,
aspect.
we are soliciting the insight of the DILG because DILG is more concentrated or focused on measures relating to administrative matter. Because I believe that this is something really administrative, not in nature, not a penalty that applies to administrative offices or administrative disciplinary action.
Madam Chair, the DLG interposes no objection on the inclusion of a provision on preventive suspension on the bill. However, our concern is only that it should be streamlined with our current parameters, with the existing parameters on preventive suspension, Your Honor. And also, Your Honor, I observed that under Section 10, the provision on preventive suspension is limited to, if I may read, Madam Chair, if the charges against such officer involve in action to prevent the commission of extrajudicial killing. So in essence, Madam Chair, this provision is limited to administrative cases and it does not cover criminal cases, Madam Chair.
I don't know if DOJ can also give us their insight, no? But I'd like to ask, if, for example, we introduced in the bill probably combination of the two, some aspect on the penal, in relation to preventive suspension, and as well as to also get some portion of the yung ombudsman. What would be the position of DOJ and DILG on this? since we are trying to explore, Madam Chair, the possibility perhaps of combining the two, since extrajudicial killing, though it is loosely used, but it has not never been defined based on its legal parameters. No, so on that note, Madam Chair, may I also ask what would be the position of the ILG and DOJ on this matter?
For the department, Honorable Ma'am and Sir, with regard to the inclusion of that provision for preventive suspension, first we have to see that if the offender is a public officer, and this preventive suspension pertains to the administrative aspect, we have that threefold liability rule po kasi for public officers. If ever he commit an offense, he or she may be held criminally, administratively, and civilly liable. So, for our part, we subject to further improvements naman po as regards the preventive suspension. So, we support such inclusion naman.
Yes, Madam Chair. I believe, Madam Chair, that the Ombudsman has no jurisdiction over the commission of this crime because this is not related in the performance of your duties. Only public officers in the performance of their duties can be tried before the office of the Ombudsman. But in this case, extrajudicial killing is not related in the performance of the duties of the public officer. Madam.
The ILG,
Madam Chair, I agree with the sentiment of Honorable Fresnedi. However, Madam Chair, the bill also has provisions on administrative negligence committed by public officers in charge of public order and safety, and also the local chief executives, Madam Chair. So in that regard, Madam Chair, it is my position that the provision on administrative negligence may be covered by the jurisdiction of the Ombudsman, Madam Chair.
maybe that will be subject to further discussion. Okay, let's hear the rest of your comments first, and then.
And second, Madam Chair, the department also has a comment on the period of preventive suspension, which is under Section 10 is for a period of 120 days. However, Your Honor, we also need to streamline this with the Ombudsman rules, which states that the respondent may be put under preventive suspension for a maximum period of 6 months, while under the local government code, it is 60 days, Madam Chair.
Just to clarify, attorney, yung raise mo na issue is not whether who has jurisdiction, ombudsman, or hindi yun
Yes,
na
Madam
issue.
Chair.
Yung inaano mo yung parameters.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Which ones they follow yung sa rules na ombudsman or sa local government code. Tama ba yung...
Yes, Madam Chair. Just to avoid any future issues, Madam Chair, because, for instance, Madam Chair, a case is taken cognizance of by the Office of the Ombudsman, with the provision that the maximum period for preventive suspension under this bill is 120 days only. There might be an issue with the Office of the Ombudsman, as it might be of the position that their authority to regulate, to enforce rules and regulations is being encroached upon by this bill, Madam Chair.
Kong Zia, you have any comments? Kong Adjun, you have any comments? Maybe we can also invite them next time to shed light on this. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Tama po yung yung tanong. Yeah, tama po yung sabi. What you're proposing, you're giving us an option whether or not to apply yung administrative sanction as to the preventive suspension ng ombudsman and ano no, yung sa penalty. No? Again, Madam Chair, I don't know because I'm just trying to also solicit the the ideas of our resource person. Ang aking position, Madam Chair, is since we are, sabi nga niya yung sa Section 9 and Section 10, he mentioned about Section 9 and Section 10, there's a presumption of administrative negligence. So maybe on the case of that particular subsection, Madam Chair, I don't know, I'm just thinking outside of the box. Maybe we can apply preventive suspension administratively because since we already have that parameters, and in the case of the criminal liability, then we can also adopt. Should we decide on avoiding any legal problems in the future, then we can also separate the two. That is my position on that. If we are to really be more conservative about avoiding any possible legal conflicts that may arise once we decide on passing this, approving this law. Or we can do some combination. I don't know. I'm just trying to explore, Madam Chair, because this is the first time that this country is proposing this kind of measure, which talks about extrajudicial. I believe what the good DILG representative is pointing out to this committee are laws or policies that have been adopted prior to the issue on EJK. And that is why these policies, these laws that he mentioned, are not receptive to the possible scenario that might happen, especially EJK. So I don't know, that is my take on that.
Madam Chair, may we hear from other resource persons so that they may enlighten us regarding this subject matter, Madam Chair?
Madam Chair, I also subscribe to the suggestion of the Honorable Presnedi. Anyway, we would like to encourage our resource persons to say what is really their feeling about the legislation. This is not an investigation in aid of legislation, whether it's a contempt. These two here present will for sure does not have the propensity to detain anyone in the resource persons. So please say your piece and your lips will not be sealed and you will not be detained so that we can come up with the more improved and refined version of our law. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Actually, an academic discussion.
Yes.
Yes. So if there's anyone who maybe when it's your turn, DILG, do you have anything else to say so that we can listen to the other?
Just one last comment, Madam
Sige,
Chair.
but we'll let him finish so that we can go ahead.
On the this is about Section 5, Madam Chair, on monetary reparation for victims. We noticed that there's no provision or statement as to where the funds will be sourced.
Will be
And also as to the salaries and emoluments of the members of the Extrajudicial Killings Claims Board, Madam.
I think that is in Section 13. No, I mean the appropriations.
Appropriation.
Yung source nasa Section 13.
I stand corrected, Madam Chair.
Yun lang.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay. So next OSG, tama-tama, they were raising, one of them was raising, you were raising your hand.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and everyone in attendance. I am State Solicitor Juan Roselino Ropa. The Office of the Solicitor General already submitted our position paper last December 3 on the bill under consideration, but I would like to discuss some of our comments. We have comments and recommendations on several sections of the bill under consideration, but let me go first, Madam Chair, to the 2 points that you mentioned earlier. One is the issue on the one title, one subject requirement of the Constitution. That was one of the issues that was deliberated upon by those who crafted our position paper for the OSG, and we stated in our position paper that in our opinion, the provisions of the proposed bill are germane to the objectives of the bill as stated in its declaration of policy. However, just to be sure that it won't be subjected to a collateral attack, we suggested that perhaps the bill, the title of the bill could be amended or revised to read instead an act to address and sorry, what was that again? An act to address and prevent extrajudicial killings, just so it will be a more comprehensive title. And we also cited in our position paper Farinas versus Executive Secretary, where it states that, if I may read, in Farinas versus Executive Secretary, it states that the title is sufficient if it be comprehensive enough, reasonably to include the general object which a statute seeks to effect, without expressing each and every end and means necessary or convenient for the accomplishing of that object. So in our opinion, Madam Chair, if it's a question of whether we should split the bill into two, one for, defining EJK and making it a heinous crime, and one for making a reparations board or committee for it, we believe that if the title were to be stated as an act to address and prevent extrajudicial killings, we feel like perhaps it could cover the reparations portion of the bill. That is the opinion of the Office of the Solicitor General. And as to the second point, Madam Chair, that you mentioned earlier, with respect to the definition of extrajudicial killing, we have here in our position paper a recommendation on how the definition in the proposed bill could be reworded. Also, we pointed out that there is a definition of extrajudicial killing in RA 11088, was it? 11188. But although that is regarding special, in armed conflict, children in armed conflict, so it's not really, perhaps that definition,
Look at it, yeah.
but perhaps that definition is too vague for our purposes here in the bill under consideration. But that's one thing that in our suggested rewording, that's the definition in that act is something that we try to incorporate just so there could be a more comprehensive, perhaps, working definition of what an extrajudicial killing is. And then, as regards our other comments po, Madam Chair, should I go through all our comments in the position paper?
But first of all, Madam Chair, I didn't know there was already a definition supplied. Which, ano po yung, pwede pong paano yun? Ano pong batas yun?
Yes, Your Honor, it's entitled the Special Protection of Children in Situations of Armed Conflict Act.
Okay.
Although we admit that it's not, it's not.
But have you included that in your position paper?
Yes po. Yes po. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to ask po, go back to the yung title po. Ma'am, have you read the title po na kasi parang sinasabi din po dito just to get your yung para ma-explain mo further yung so you want to make it as simple as possible, the title, no? Kasi parang nandito rin po sa title nito on the last phrase, no, strengthening the mechanism for its prevention. Would you like to, are you proposing that to make it shorter and more simple para hindi siya masyadong matouch yung issue ng two subject matters, yung overriding na mga...
Your Honor, that is the suggestion of our office, maybe a more broad, comprehensive title. Anyway, since in the declaration of policy, it will be stated there, that
So would it be kung halimbawa, can you state your proposed title kung po pwede?
It is in the position paper, but I also read it. I will just, well, we recommend that it be entitled "An Act to Address and Prevent Extrajudicial Killing."
Period. Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you, mayroon ka pang other points to raise?
I think, Your Honor, just one last, because this is one of the most important comments that we have in our position paper. We suggested, if I may read, to further strengthen the proposed law and underscore the government's commitment to addressing extrajudicial killings, it is recommended to include a provision penalizing state agents' negligence in investigating such cases. So we included here in our position paper a sample draft provision, a malicious inaction in investigating EJ case. That is on the last page of our position paper po.
May we know, Madam Chair, if the OSG is supportive of this bill? Just want to be categorical.
Yes, of course.
Okay,
of
thank
course.
you.
It goes without saying, but yes,
I think
Your Honor.
they submitted the position paper, and then they gave comments for each provision, and then they gave their recommendations, if any. So I think we can use their position paper. Anything else from the members?
Madam Chair, may I ask the Office of the Solicitor General whether, in fact, the term extrajudicial killing is something that is acceptable to your office as a term that we would be using for purposes of this proposed measure?
Not just the definition, but the term itself.
Yes, yes.
OSG. Yeah,
Yes, yes, Your Honors. We are actually using extrajudicial killings in our pleadings. And it is also in the decisions of the courts, Your Honors.
But I'd like to know, Madam Chair, if there is a specific provision of law at present that deals with extrajudicial killing.
There is none, Your Honor. So far, there is none.
this is the one on flashed on the.
Yeah.
That's the one.
RA 1188.
Madam Chair, I just want to be correct. I don't want to correct myself. Early, I said probably the terminologies were coined by the media. I would like to stand corrected on that. I did not know that they've been using this this phrase in legal in the courts, and there's already a law that defines extrajudicial killing. Just to put on record, Madam Chair. Thank you.
It's noted and.
Madam Chair, actually I asked that because if you try to read the proposed measure, in section 3, definition of terms, paragraph A, it says, extrajudicial killing refers to any killing other than that imposed by the state. So I wondered if there is a killing which is imposed by the state. I'm confused with that. So in other words, this killing other than extrajudicial that is imposed by the state what is your take on this?
Yes.
Your Honor.
Right. Oh, wala.
From what we have, from our idea, or from what we have gathered from the court decisions, extrajudicial killings, these are acts committed by public officers without they are not really or actually authorized by the state, but they are committed by public officers. So extrajudicial killings are committed by, it cannot be called extrajudicial killings if it is not committed by public officers.
Madam Chair, what is the what is your take on this definition that extrajudicial killing refers to any killing other than that imposed by the state? Is that going to appear, or suppose now that there are other killings which are imposed by the state? Yes, none.
It is not sanctioned by the state, Your Honor. It is not sanctioned by the state.
Just to answer, Congressman, your question, in our position paper, actually, that is one of the things that we pointed out, that the definition, referral to the killing other than that imposed by the state, it causes some confusion because, again, as stated in our position, there is supposedly there should be no death penalty, so there should be no killing pursuant imposed by the state. So that's one, actually, yes, that's exactly one of the things that we pointed out in our position paper.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Madam Chair. I just would like to react to the statement of the representative from OSG that all actors must be public officers. I don't believe, Madam Chair, that all the perpetrators of this killing must always be public officers, because they are those who are hired by the public officers, but they are not. They are not public officers. So I believe this is a government-sanctioned illegal killings, but not necessarily all actors are public officers, Madam Chair.
Sir, may I just clarify?
Can you wait?
Sorry.
Kung easy, you wanted to say something.
Oh, okay. I think we have, all of us have a basic understanding of what an EJK is. I mean, there's a widely accepted definition, maybe imposed to us by media. But I think the definition under Section 3A should be revised, just because I agree with the OSG. Section 3A seems to tell us that there are state-sanctioned killings, and there will never be a time from now on that there will be state-sanctioned killings, as we already signed, if I'm not mistaken. Is that a treaty or something that we are bound not to reintroduce death penalty? So having said that, there will be no killing imposed by the state or any deliberate and arbitrary killing of any person not under a previous judgment. That's why I think we have to reword Section 3A.
Okay, now you can speak. Please wait to be acknowledged. Yes.
Apologies, Madam Chair. I just would like to clarify, Your Honor, what you mentioned a while ago, that there are perpetrators who are not public officers, but under Section 4 of the proposed bill, they are acting under the actual or apparent authority of the public officers. So, technically, it is the responsibility or also the liability of the public officer. That is my opinion.
But Madam Chair, the earlier statement was that all perpetrators must be government employees or officials. But there are those perpetrators who are hired by the government officials or employees to do this extrajudicial killing, Madam Chair. That is my only point, Madam Chair.
So in effect, the provision on preventive suspension only applies to public officers.
Not necessarily, Madam Chair. This is a government-sanctioned extrajudicial killing or commission of crime. Government sanctioned, but not necessarily all perpetrators are government employees or officials.
Madam Chair, may I
Yes,
pose a question to OSG? Perhaps we can enlighten. Gusto ko lang po yung
Clarify.
text, yung sinabi po ni Manong Jaime. This is what we're trying to propose here is a bill and hopefully that will become a law. And terms and words that are used, the language in itself should be very, very specific, because I believe that's how courts can really decide on. Because though we may loosely use the word extrajudicial killings, but in application as to the hearing this in the courts, they are supposed to be definitive and some legal implications. May I also, kasi yung sinabi po ni Manong Jaime, OSG, I just also want to be clarified, how can you delineate, for example, in terms of the legal implication vis-a-vis the culpability and the penalty ascribed to commissioning of certain acts of a crime? How can we be clarified? Paano mo masasabi na it's an extrajudicial killing and paano mo masasabi na it's a murder? Because I guess there's a very thin line, a hair-splitting difference between these two if you looked at it, no? Kasi nag-gets ko po yung ni Manong Jaime, though they are not public officers, but they have been commissioned allegedly by public officers to commit this crime on their behalf. So gusto ko lang po malaman, can you also maybe provide us so that we can refine this bill? Because I believe there's already a penalty for murder, right? It's under the heinous crime. Although it may fall within the ambit of, that specific action or a specific crime, but sabi ko nga, it's a hair splitting in difference ng two. Can you, yes, please, OSG.
Sir, you are asking for the difference between murder and extrajudicial killing.
Here is that of the, yes.
So before that po, we have our position paper. In our position paper, the OSG has a recommendation for the rewording of Section 3A actually po. Because since we opine that the wording of Section 3A may cause confusion in the proposed
3A?
Yes, sir.
3A.
The OSG suggested a rewording of the of said provision. May I read the suggested rewording?
Yes.
Extrajudicial killing. Okay. I'll read first the proposed provision in the bill. Extrajudicial killing refers to any killing other than that imposed by the state pursuant to the provisions of the Constitution on heinous crimes, or a deliberate and arbitrary killing of any person not authorized by a previous judgment pronounced by a competent court, affording all the judicial guarantees which are recognized as indispensable by civilized peoples. It may be committed by a public officer, person in authority, agent of a person in authority, or any person who is acting under the actual or apparent authority of the state. So since it is our opinion that the wording of Section 3A may cause confusion because as a signatory to the second optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the Philippines is legally bound not to reintroduce the death penalty as a capital punishment. Thus, the definition should focus on deliberate and unlawful killings without due process of law, instead of making it appear that the Philippines allows killings sanctioned by the state and or the courts of competent jurisdiction. So the rewording reads as follows. Extrajudicial killing refers to the deliberate and unlawful killing of any person for any purpose by a public officer, person in authority, agent of a person in authority, or any person who is acting under the actual or apparent authority of the state. The killing is without a lawful court order, meaning it is not, since there is no death penalty, if there is a death penalty, if the death penalty will be lifted, then the court may order the killing, because that's what we were referring. With the phrase, the killing is without a lawful court order or due process as guaranteed under the Constitution and recognized international human rights standards. Such killings violate the general recognition of the right to life as embodied under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the United Nations Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child, and the similar other human rights treaties to which the Philippines is a state party.
We'll flash the suggested definition on the. Give us a second.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
may we also recognize the lady from
Before we continue, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of one of the authors of the bill, Congressman Bienvenido Abante from the 6th District of Manila.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry for being late.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so while we're waiting for the technical issues here to be resolved, can we hear from the...
Yeah, I say something for a
Yes,
while.
sir.
I've been watching the deliberation in my car coming here. And the definition given by the OSG is very good, no? But we would like this to be simplified. All right? Napakahaba eh. If we could be able to simplify the definition, we do not even need to mention the United Nations, whatever it might be, hindi niya kailangan yun eh. If we should simplify it, you mentioned about us being a part of the United Nations, as far as taking away the capital punishment is or death penalty, no? Nilagay lamang namin dito yung tinatawag nating penalty of life imprisonment because we do not have yet the death penalty. But we are also going to file a bill reimposing the death penalty. And we do not even care about what the United Nations tells us because we are a sovereign country. So we will be filing that. So therefore, kami mamaya, we're going to change that. Siguro pag in-approve na yung death penalty because we need the death penalty now. Nakita natin yung extrajudicial killings. We need that now instead of people like what we're saying now, killing people, di ba, against the Constitution, i-institute natin yung death penalty. Mas maganda yung ganun. Di ba?
Going back to the definition proposed by...
Short.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Madam Chair, based po so far sa dinadali din ng discussion natin, I also believe that we have to revise the definition so far na nasa House Bill 10986. Although sa pagtingin natin, Madam Chair, ng representation na ito, with all due respect sa colleague po natin, I think mas may na po na ma-phrase yung definition nang hindi po nakadepend dun sa posibleng anumang pre-imposition ng death penalty, since also that would entail further discussion pa among members of the House. Still lang, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Anyway, this is just a suggestion of the OSG, so it will be up to the committee to refine it. I mean, we don't have to adopt it word for word, no. But at least they are just suggesting. So this is their suggestion that's on the screen, which is more general, I guess. But yun nga, medyo mahaba, so we can also refine that.
Ano, Madam Chair, do we submit na to us naman, di ba?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, they already submitted this last, December, kailan nyo sinubmit? Yeah, they submitted early. Yes, you have something to say.
Your Honor, Madam Chair, just wanted to go back to the question po of Congressman Adyong. He asked earlier, if if it's a fine line, if we're gonna split hairs between what is murder and what is an extrajudicial
that was the
killing.
question.
Yeah. In my opinion, that's a very good question. But right now, I'm gonna speak in terms of my personal opinion. This is not in the position paper anymore. I feel like if a person, let's say not a state agent, any person, but someone who kills someone under an apparent or authority given by a public official, this is again my personal opinion, that should be considered an extrajudicial killing as opposed to murder, because murder, for example, I can murder someone because I'm mad at that person or for any other reason other than being na parang inutusan ako, binayaran ako ng public officer. For me, that's as long as, let's say, a certain killing, it fits the requisites of what murder is under the law, that's murder. But for extrajudicial killing, parang kumbaga po, let's add another requisite that it was done because it was ordered by or apparent or actual, under the apparent or actual authority of a public official. Parang ganun po. But that's my personal opinion.
Okay. Any other resource person who would like to
Madam Chair, let me...
Yes, Kong Abante.
Okay yung opinion mo eh. And that is the reason why we filed this bill, because all of the policemen that killed supposedly the victims were charged in court as homicide, not murder. In reality, that is murder. Di ba? Ang kanilang katuwiran lang, kaya homicide yan, nanlaban. Kaya nga sinasabi namin, I think we should even have an ocular inspection in the crime lab of the Philippine National Police, sapagkat if they killed more than 7,000 of the victims, nanlaban lahat yan, there ought to be an evidence. Di ba? Ng weapons, whatever weapons it might be, sa nanlaban. Kung wala, that would be murder. Therefore, kaya namin nanonood itong bill na itong extrajudicial killings.
For this send to the OSG, no, and whoever, yung mga resource persons natin, would it be an option to make it a qualifying circumstance so that will be murder instead of a separate offense? Well, is that something that we should consider?
Madam Chair, you mean a qualifying circumstance to make it an EJK instead?
Yes.
Instead of just murder?
Instead of having another bill na magiging murder, siya yung sinasabi ni Kong Abante. Kasi nga homicide lang ngayon ang fina-file sa kanila.
Hey, Your Honor.
Talagang kailangan special,
Madam Chair.
separate bill.
But,
Yes, go ahead.
Madam Chair, I don't think that it is only homicide that was being filed for cases of killing. Like in the case of Kian de los Santos, murder, the charge was murder. May conviction na po yan.
Conviction na yun.
Opo.
Because, Madam Chair,
Yes, Kong Abante.
because in the first place, there was no weapon found kay Kian de los Santos. In reality, that's why it's murder. Pero karamihan, for example, like in Caloocan, the first charge against the policeman who killed those victims was murder. But then it was changed by the ombudsman to homicide. Why? Sapagkat nanlaban daw yung mga tao. So, but then the evidence would be, nasaan yung evidence? Nanlaban sila. That is actually the question. Oo. Kaya, because, kaya Madam Chair, nagkaroon ng ganitong bill, no? To be able to perhaps make a definite definition ng extrajudicial killings.
Sir, I think there is a distinction naman po. May difference naman po like what Attorney Europas discussed a while ago. Meron naman pong there's thin line between murder and extrajudicial killing. So, dun po sa mga previous cases, since we don't have an extrajudicial killing law yet, so ganun po, they are treated as regular crime under the revised penal code. So, kung walang qualifying circumstances po, homicide siya. And then murder pag may qualifying po.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, yes, I think on the issue of whether or not an officer commits a extrajudicial killing, mas madali po yung ma-identify because pag officer talaga in the line of duty, for example, makikita mo naman talaga, no? What is more difficult, I guess, for this committee is to at least contextualize or to describe the manner by which a contracting assassin. Yun lang mahirap maybe we can also ask OSG to help us out on how to determine. Kasi halimbawa, meron akong na-contact na tatlo para patayin si ito. No joke. Yung mga ganong klaseng senaryo, yun ang mahirap i-prove. So maybe we can ask OSG to at least help us out to describe in that kind of scenario and circumstance.
Before we continue, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Deputy Minority Leader Franz Castro. OSG? OSG yung question mo? For OSG, Kong Zia? For OSG.
I'd like to maybe solicit the opinion and then maybe perhaps an advice. Maybe input from the OSG because I think that's where the problem and I think that's the difficulty. Kasi nandito po sa Section 9 and sa Section 10, di ba? Yung kaya nga tayo nagkakaroon ng preventive yung presumption yung negligence ng part ng kasi officer kasi nag-contract siya ng isang assassin or isang hired gun, yung mga vigilante na type of killings. Doon mo tayo magkakaproblema doon. Yung nagko-contract ka ng isang services ng hired killers. So I guess naka-fall dun po sa definition ng EJK, di ba? It's not a murder because sabi nga ng lady lawyer natin, if it's a murder, I have a grudge against a particular person, then ginawa ko yun. But this one is yung commission ng crime is wala kang pakialam, wala kayong connection doon sa taong yun, basta lang kasi kinuha ka, kinontract yung services mo, then ginawa mo yun. That falls under AJK kasi public officer yung nakipag-usap sa'yo. I don't know, for political reason, whatever. No? So gusto ko lang pong, I think, makunan ko ano yung possible na po pwedeng may dagdag ng OSG on that circumstance to define that particular circumstance so that we can have a very clear qualifier na yung sinasabi po na scenario where we can connect this particular officer and now those of individuals who have been hired to kill a certain individual that would fall under the category of EJK. Doon po ako magkakaroon ng problema, I guess, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, perhaps we can go back to the explanatory note now, where we said that extrajudicial killing or the killing of individuals without judicial proceedings or legal authority poses a great threat to the rule of law, democracy, and the protection of human rights. These acts bypass established judicial procedures, undermining public trust in the justice system and violating the basic rights to life and due process guaranteed by the Constitution. The lack of accountability for such crimes contributes to a culture of impunity where perpetrators believe they can act without fear or legal consequences. Yun po yung nakalagay namin sa explanatory note. Perhaps our OSG, who are really very good lawyers, could read the explanatory note first and then make suggestions as far as simplifying some provisions in the bill. Madam Chair.
Yes, OSG.
That is noted, Your Honor.
And I would like to ask Kong Samora if her question was answered.
Um, yes, Madam Chair. I think actually I was just showing my support to the OSG's position. And Madam Chair, I also want to manifest that I agree actually with your suggestion earlier about maybe making the circumstances present in the killing an aggravating circumstance. I went through the
RPC.
many circumstances which aggravate criminal liability. And maybe just a suggestion, maybe we could add the circumstances of EJK to this. It would make murder or homicide murder under the circumstances, the aggravating circumstances of EJK. After all, murder is punishable by reclusion perpetua, and here the penalty that they want to impose, I believe, is life imprisonment, which is actually properly termed as reclusion perpetua under our RPC. So, there,
OSG,
Madam Chair.
any comments on the... Any comments, OSG? Yes?
Your Honor, just to go back po dun sa question again ni Congressman Adyong regarding, yun nga po, the difficulty in his question. Wait. Again, we were brainstorming here, but again, this is not in our position paper. We admit na mahirap po kasi to prove eh, di ba? When is it murder, when is it EJK? But yun nga, if you're contracted, if a person kills someone because he was contracted by a public official, it's a matter of evidence, eh. It's a matter of defense. So I was just thinking lang at the top of my head, could it be possible that perhaps the prosecutor files a murder charge, and then during preliminary investigation or proceedings before the prosecutor, the person complained of na who killed somebody na EJK, he could raise that as a defense na he was contracted by someone, and then after he raises that as a defense, I'm not sure we can amend the information to make it an EJK. Parang ganun po siguro.
Your thoughts? Well, before that, can you answer first the question of Congresswoman Samor?
Sorry, Congressman Bell. What was the question again?
I was actually showing my support to the suggestion of Chair about making the circumstances present in an EJK killing an aggravating circumstance. Or, yes.
An aggravating circumstance to
if it's homicide, then it becomes, make it murder. Something like that.
Yes, Kong.
Madam Chair, may I ask therefore the OSG, no? Upon reading the bill, how do you differentiate between EJK and murder?
Sir, yun nga po, as mentioned a while ago, when it's murder, regular killing po siya. Pero pag meron ng order from a public officer, sanction siya ng kung sino man yung public official, then it becomes extrajudicial killing.
Yes, Kong Samora.
Hindi pa din yung question ni Congressman.
Ito meron.